Hey, it's Michael J, and I am here at the end of the line of the Transcontinental Railroad in Sacramento, California, where this old train depot is preserved. Now, the train did extend down to Oakland eventually, but the first passengers got off in Sacramento, and then you took a riverboat, and 6 months later they finished the track that went to Oakland. So, let's explore a little history about the Transcontinental Railroad.
The depot on Front Street is a reconstruction of the original from the 1870s as pictured in William Hahn's famous painting hanging in San Francisco's De Young Legion of Honor. The first Transcontinental Railroad was a 1,912-mile continuous railroad line constructed between 1863 and 1869. Because it was a link to the East Coast and headed towards the West Coast, it was known as the Pacific Railroad, and for obvious reasons, it was sometimes called the Overland Route. Starting in Omaha, Nebraska, the line eventually terminated in Oakland, California. Already existing railways connected passengers to New York City. The railroad was built by 3 companies altogether. The Western Pacific Railroad Company built the 132-mile line that linked Oakland to Sacramento. The Central Pacific Company built 690 miles from Sacramento to Utah. And the longest length of 1,085 miles was built by the Union Pacific Railroad between Utah and Omaha, Nebraska. In 1869, Leland Stanford ceremoniously hammered the last spike, known as the Golden Spike, that connected the railroad ties from both directions at Promontory Summit, Utah. At that point, Sacramento was the end of the line, and passengers to San Francisco and the Bay Area took a riverboat down the Sacramento River. One of these riverboats, the Delta King, is permanently moored in Old Sacramento and operates as a hotel. It took another 6 months to complete the rail route from Sacramento to Oakland. The Transcontinental Railroad line was in operation until 1962. The Central Pacific Railroad was formed by 4 men of Northern California: Leland Stanford, President; Collis Potter Huntington, Vice President; Mark Hopkins, Treasurer; and Charles Crocker, Construction Supervisor. The Crocker Mansion sits only a few blocks away from the original Sacramento train terminal and serves today as the Crocker Art Museum. The story about the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad is an adventurous and harrowing one. A lot of hard labor was performed by Asian workers, and they are the unsung heroes of that monumental achievement. The story includes all kinds of dangers, including conflict with Native Americans, who called the train the Iron Horse. Hollywood made good use of this true-life adventure early on with a film called Iron Horse, directed by John Ford in 1924. Other films, such as Union Pacific, and the Cinerama masterpiece How the West Was Won, depict the building of the Transcontinental Railroad in dramatic fashion.
Portrayed by Eli Wallach, and Lee J. Cobb as the dauntless U.S. Marshal who tracked him down. Like Mike King, portrayed by Richard Widmark.
Even the comedians made good use of it in Western send-ups like The Marx Brothers Go West. Mae West shoots Indians from the speeding train in My Little Chickadee with W.C. Fields. The train engine used in the film Union Pacific is actually in residence with the Sacramento Train Museum and parked inside the old depot. This engine last operated in 1953. A few blocks away at 4th and I Streets, the Sacramento Valley Station building is from 1926 and has been the place where passengers coming through Sacramento disembark through the life of 2 previous train stations on this site. The station is part of a larger area formerly devoted to the building and maintenance of trains. 15 blocks to the east, the Western Pacific Railway Station from 1909 is now the Spaghetti Factory restaurant. Passengers boarding at this station were on their way to Oakland to the west and Utah to the north. The line was a competitor to the service provided by the Southern Pacific Railroad. Also, this line is still in operation for freight trains, though passenger service ended in 1970. Now there are plans in the works for a new commuter train service with a station to be built at Q Street along these tracks. Today, if one wanted to cross the country from New York to Northern California by train, the route would be New York to Chicago aboard the Amtrak Lakeshore Limited on an overnight trip that puts you in Chicago's Union Station at 10 a.m. There's time for a little city exploration before a 2 p.m. departure on the California Zephyr for 2 more nights before passing through Sacramento and ending up in Emeryville, where a Bay Area regional transit train takes you across the bay and into the city of San Francisco. Before BART came along, the only way across the bay to the city was by ferry boat. The story of the Transcontinental Railroad is a huge and complicated one that I can't possibly cover completely, but the building of that transportation system changed America forever, and I just think there's something wonderful about living in the town of Sacramento where the first passengers to cross the country by rail stepped off the train at the end of the line.